Hello everybody, welcome back to yet another banger originator video. Now today we are going to be talking about why I think it's okay to use a Percy skin in Mania. So of course we're going to explain what is Percy, why do I use it personally, and why do a lot of people hate on people that use Percy. Before the video starts, obviously always remember that using Percy is a choice. You shouldn't hate on anyone just because they use Percy. You shouldn't discriminate. Some people like Percy because it's easier to read. Some people have bad eyesight. That's always going to be my excuse, but I could probably deal fine without it. And of course, using Percy doesn't make a play any less impressive. Whatever someone does with Percy, they can probably do without Percy. It will just take some time to learn. So Percy is not cheating in any way at all, at least in my opinion, and it's not bannable. So sometimes you got to remember that a play is a play, and just don't hate on anyone just because they decide to use Percy. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and let's just get right into it. So of course, to talk about Percy, we need to explain what actually is Percy. Well, Percy is basically just an edit of any skin at all, circle skin, bar skin, arrow skin. And what it does is it makes the LN, the long note, appear to be slightly shorter than it actually is. Now, this can be a fade out, so it fades to black, or it can be a big cut off, especially with bar skins. This can be a very sudden cut off, or it can be subtle. It usually looks best when there's a little bit of a fade out. And what this does is it makes reading, for example, 10-star LN maps way easier, because when you get to those difficulties, without Percy, it can become extremely dense and you just can't read the gaps at all, and you can't see what you're meant to do. But with Percy, you're able to read these gaps much easier, and for some maps you can actually play LN like it's rice, because when Percy shortens the LN on some maps like Fallen Symphony, for example, the LN is so short already that it just appears as rice, but just a slightly different color if your LN is a different color. And if it's even shorter than that, then it might just literally appear as straight up rice, and you would never know it's LN unless you looked into the editor, just like this screenshot right here. So this can make LN maps extremely easy compared to without Percy. And of course, this is why Percy can be heavily debated to be cheating, because it does make the game look a lot less dense, which can in turn make the game slightly easier. But Percy does have its fair share of downsides, so what are they? The biggest and most talked about downside of Percy is the fact that because it makes the LN visibly shorter, obviously the player will release the LN quicker than they should, which can lead to slightly worse ratio. So when you would get a marvelous, now with Percy you might get a perfect. And of course this has massive long-term effects, because Percy can teach the player to play incorrectly, because they will be releasing LN much shorter. So if they're trying to play accuracy, they're going to have worse ratio, and of course this can lead to worse ratio scores, but overall Percy will improve your accuracy. So people say, you know, this can be a cheap way of getting more accuracy while ruining your ratio. And another thing about Percy is a lot of new players try Percy straight away, because a lot of players, when they're new to the game, they struggle with LN, because obviously you're learning the keys, you're going to struggle to hold the LN and tap other notes, which is fine. That's completely normal to struggle with longer notes when you're starting out. But a lot of early players are just putting on Percy straight away, some not even knowing that their skin has Percy, which can really be detrimental to their improvement, because again, it can hinder their ratio improvement and skill wall them even. And of course, with such harsh downsides and such amazing upsides, Percy really is just a mixed bag, and lots of people have completely different opinions. Top players, 6 digits, 4 digits, everyone has different opinions and different takes. So to help you figure out what your stance on Percy is, I'm going to bring in some special guests to talk about their experience with Percy or their experience without Percy. So hopefully you can try and figure out, you know, what's best for you. Do you want to use Percy, or do you want to stick to not using it? And of course, remember, there is no right or wrong answer. The best thing you can do is to stick to what you enjoy and what works best for you in your own personal opinion. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Hello, I'm Ting Momentum. Thank you, Rage, for letting me be part of this video to share my perspective as a non-Percy user. Now, as someone who specializes in LN, I've never used Percy. It looks really messy from my point of view, probably because I never used it, but needless to say is that I probably won't use it ever to gain benefits. This skin edit was made to help with players read LNs easier, and a lot of players use it for farming, or they just simply can't read it without Percy. Some people may get the stereotype that you may need Percy to play top tier LN maps that only few people can play, but surprisingly, it's not that common, at least in 4-key. If I'm gonna be honest, I've never seen a top 7-key player that does not use Percy. It's almost as if every 7-key player uses it, but I don't know. I only say that because I don't hang around with 7-key often. Anyways, it helps with reading. That's an obvious factor. It gives people the advantage of being able to play charts that require a lot of skill just to even read it, when it's impressive enough when there are no long notes already. But with Percy, no matter how many arguments you use against it, it will make the chart easier. However, there are downsides to this. Most importantly, accuracy. With all the PP reworks that happened and how the PP system works for Mania, accuracy is very essential now. Unless you're very good at releasing the LNs late, but I don't understand why you would have the mentality to learn that instead of learning the damn LNs without Percy. I know players like Demi-Fiend SMT, Jiwi10, Nepogin, and a lot more that are regarded as some of the best LN players in Mania, even when they don't use Percy. This is because they have played LN maps long enough where they can get used to it eventually, which is absolutely essential when it comes to being able to ACK LNs. Majority of players who rely on maining the accuracy side of LNs, which people will find really impressive, but also another side factor is that it can help you ACK even the harder LN charts, such as Dance Number Watomini, which I believe someone's almost assessed. Now of course, with all the benefits that Percy may give you, I am against the idea of having Percy skins because of the fact that it may cheese your way to the top, but of course it doesn't damage the game and I won't really care that much. It's not as severe as spam screenshots during the map to make it slower, break tapping in standard, pausing frequently in stamina maps, and a lot more so-called fundamentals to cheese the game. But of course, it is a notable thing when it comes to cheesy ways to find your way to get comfort. But there are loads of ways to find comfort without cheesing, such as changing the object color, column width, scroll speed, and a lot more mechanics to find your comfort zone, without having to endure the annoyance of people calling you out for it. But overall, Percy really isn't that bad. Just don't do anything that will deem you a cheater. That's all I have to say from my perspective as a non-Percy user. Back to you, Rage.
So yeah, as you can see, Ting is definitely more towards the negative side of Percy. You know, he's a top player, but he doesn't use Percy and he's extremely good at LN. And yeah, he really gives a great insight to why you shouldn't use Percy and, you know, the disadvantages to it. Obviously, he still gives a balanced argument saying the advantages, so you can tell, you know, he's coming from a genuine place and personally he just doesn't believe in it. And again, that's absolutely fine. You can have your own opinion, and obviously using Percy isn't cheating, it's in no way an exploit. But I can agree with Ting saying it's a little bit cheesy because it does actually make the game easier compared to other people. When they're playing without Percy, it is harder to read. So, you know what, that's a completely fair take. But now we're going to have a take from the other side of the story, from Softer, who uses Percy a pretty good amount of time, but not all the time like me. So maybe his opinion will be quite a bit less biased because, you know, he's not always using Percy. So he does understand the benefits and the disadvantages. And of course, because he does still use Percy quite a bit, he will definitely have a more experienced take because he has some more knowledge on using Percy. So yeah, over to you, Softer.
Hello everyone, I'm Softer, I'm a hidden player and also an LM main, and I play with both Percy and without Percy. So, in my opinion, Percy is mostly based around preference more than anything. Basically, preference is what skinning is mostly about. Mainly, you want the game to feel and look better, but also make your reading better. Because normally, some players just can't read more dense lens in terms of with Percy or without Percy, because normally the releases look like more staggered for some or look too short for others, which makes it a lot more different in terms of how you read it. It's mostly around the preference of how you would like to read it, but it's also how you get used to it, because normally when you play a lot with Percy, you might not be able to play again without Percy like anymore, because your reading just got used to the LN length that the Percy had instead of the non-Percy skin. I've seen a lot of players that just play without Percy and they just suck ass because they normally just play with Percy all the time. But that's not a bad thing, it's just how they read. And if you see a player that plays lens with Percy, there's nothing really that bad. It's mostly a tool to make yourself read a lot better in terms of density and other types of patterns, but it's also based around preference. If you like Percy, you can play with Percy. If you don't like Percy, you can play without it. It's more of an option. And there's always types of skins that actually require Percy to even work, such as bar skins. Bar lens are actually a lot based around Percy, because normally you can see that if you remove the background dim, like you can see the background, and the bar lens just have like a black square. That's mostly because they have a very slight Percy. Some others have a more heavier Percy, but it's like, it depends on how the skinner made it or how you would like to play with it. And if you like it or not, well, it's basically your opinion. It doesn't matter if you play with Percy or if you play without Percy. You still have to learn how to play the patterns instead of just saying that, okay, you play with Percy, that makes it automatically impossible for you to be a good player. And yeah, it might be a skin shortcut, but it's mostly around preference. It just depends on the player and depends on the skinner itself. It's just like playing it within lane cover. That's my opinion, and thanks for listening, I guess.
And there we go, that was Softer's opinion. Now, thank you to Ting and Softer for coming to the video. Massive thanks, really appreciate having you guys on. And so as you can see, Softer's more towards a balanced opinion. You know, he's for and against, understands it. Obviously, Ting is a bit more towards the no Percy side, and both of them are completely in the right and they are entitled to their own opinions. Personally, I'm also somewhere around the same as Softer, maybe a bit more towards for Percy, because in my opinion, again, as Softer said, as Ting said, do what you want. It's fine. It's all about preference. And I think, you know, if Percy's going to help you, go for it. Use it. Because why not? I mean, you can never be bad without Percy as long as you always use Percy, you know? As long as you just stick to Percy, then you'll be fine, you know? And if you want to get into tourneys, then maybe try practicing without Percy for a bit. And, you know, it will end up being fine in the end. Just do whatever you want to do. Whatever makes you feel the happiest playing the game, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable, go for it. That's completely fine, because that's the main goal of Mania. Just have fun, enjoy the journey, enjoy improving, do whatever you want. As long as it's not actually cheating, go for it. Use Percy. It's absolutely fine. No one can stop you. No one can scrutinize you. So I hope this video was fun for you and, you know, helped you kind of understand Percy a bit more and get a better insight into, you know, the fors and againsts for Percy. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for Ting and Softer again for coming on, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed my video. Go check out my other videos and consider subscribing, as it will make me feel good. I'll see you all in the next video.